first of all, I want to say thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Your bio is phenomenal. I mean, it's so diverse, and you know, a lot of guys I have on here have a diverse background, but it's kind of the same flavor. You have done like categorically different adventures, I want to say, in your life, and I can't wait to talk about them. Do you want to start from the beginning and go chronological? Because I really am fascinated by, because I didn't know. I knew about pararescue men in the Air Force, but I did not know that the Navy had them as well. And your time in the Navy was it was a very unique situation. Like, not a lot of people got to do what you did. So do you want to start with that, and then we can just kind of circle back to some other stuff, or what do you think?
Sure. Absolutely, JD.
Okay.
That's fine. And thanks for having me on. It was good. Our first, contact leading to this was really genuinely wonderful. Well, first of all, Pararescue Navy, Antarctica is different than the Air Force. We weren't dealing with war-torn areas, evacuating people out, but our enemy was the weather.
Yeah.
It was Antarctica. It was minus, deep numbers, winds, whiteouts, inability to jump in with a mishap is what we called them. I don't know if you did, or if you know, airplanes going down. We called them mishaps in the 70s, and everything went black, dark, all communication. Now, communication was ham radio,
Right.
so it's not like today. Oh my goodness, So when things went dark, that's when anyone at home knew something was up.
Sure.
But the pararescue, it was just fortuitous that I ended up with it. I decided to go into the Navy. I went through school, high school, grade school, fourth grade on, with a large family, 5 other brothers and sisters. Our daddy died when we were all very young in Vermont. We had just landed in Vermont. We'd been there a year. We came from South Carolina. We were all born on Army bases. He was a captain when he was in the service, general's aide, and worked Korea. So we landed in Vermont, schooled there, and when it came time, well, actually, about 10th grade, I told my mother, I'm leaving. And she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I just can't deal with this." My class, and I did end up graduating there, was 31. That was 5 towns.
Wow.
And I said to her in 10th grade, what am I, 15, 16 years old? I just come back from this incredible encampment for citizenship that was international in Great Falls, Montana. I'd been selected, and they funded me. I don't know, it was the Masons or someone in town.
Yeah.
Put the money together, and they said, find a student to go. And I did. And at 15, and when I came back and started school again, I realized there was a world so far beyond Vermont and this very rural area. And so the only cultural activity that we could get, other than a phenomenal English teacher that came in from Chicago and introduced us to a lot of things, was going to Hopkins Center at Dartmouth. Dartmouth College was maybe 30 minutes away from where I lived. It's in Hanover, New Hampshire, but it's right across the line. But I lived in Vermont close. And I just said, I've got to, Mom, I can't stand it here. See that out there? She said, read a book. I said, what book? I don't want to read. Read Call of the Wild. I know about Call of the Wild. I'll go there.
Right.
And she said, first lesson, one of the first, if you can't deal with where you are in the moment, you have no business putting a foot forward. Learn to deal with where you are and accept it, live it fully. You'll be told what to do. And now kind of a light bulb went off. I said, okay. And then somehow I was keyed into a Churchill quote. Really, probably within 6 months after that, there was the same thing. I'm going to read it because this has been the core to my life.
Yeah.
To each there comes in their lifetime a special moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered the chance to do a very special thing, unique to them and fitted for their talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds them unprepared or unqualified for that which could have been their finest hour. And I read that. I thought of my mom. I thought of the things that I had to adapt to. You know, I didn't know the word adapt.
Sure.
But I certainly understood, fully engaged in the present, you'll be led where to go next. And I had to reason, because I'm a thinker, I had to reason as to, well, what about what I want?
Right.
Well, I want, and they said, well, figure out what you want. But if today they call it pivots, but if there's a pivot, go with that.
Sure.
But go fully with where you are. And when you pivot, you'll know it's a right move until you prove it wrong. And so I decided to, and I wasn't ready for college at all. I don't know how I got out of high school. I mean, they were very kind. My principal was, he saw, I don't know. The thing is that it's really amazing that so many people in my life saw something in me, and I got a lot of taps to do things. And so the Navy was it. And I thought, as I looked into it, and my mother was all for it, and I thought I'd go for the Judge Advocates program. And then I thought, no, fly jets, aircraft carriers. I ended up going in, and I thought, afterwards I would get the GI Bill, go to college, get back into the Navy, and apply to jet school. I ended up with a squadron that flew planes for the National Science Foundation in Antarctica. The year is 1973-4. 1974-5 was my first season down there. And sitting in the enlisted men's club, a fellow was sitting across from me and said, "You're new." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's that on your chest?" He said, "Parachute wings." For what? He said, "I earned them. I'm a skydiver. I'm a member of the Antarctic Pararescue team." I said, "No way. Where is that? You want to join?" Blah, blah, blah. 6 months later, I ended up becoming a member. And when I stepped off the C-130 for the first time into Antarctica, I had my wings.
Nice.
And you get your gold wings after 10 jumps. Ultimately, I ended up with a lot of jumps. Mm-hmm. But it was just spectacular, JD. And it was not Air Force pararescue, but it was precision skydiving. We put out our own streamers. We only one jump. It was the jump at the South Pole in 1977 that we actually went with navigational aids. Mm-hmm. And wow, other than that, I was never a jump master, but there was always a jump master.
Right.
And we put streamers out and we figured out where our DZ, the drop zone, is. And that was key first. Number one is, could this individual handle skydiving? And we would get up, we would go up high, we'd go up higher, a little higher. And we had the pilots, the outfit they were all mavericks. They were all true definition of mavericks. I mean, unusual, unique, and handpicked for this business. But so the helo pilots, we had UH-1N twin jet engine helicopters. And the pilots there, these guys are 27 years old, and they're Lieutenant JGs. And they're full of piss and vinegar, as they say.
Sure.
And they would lift off, drop the nose, and take off as fast as they could. And we would spiral up to 12, 14,000 feet. Who knows, And we'd do some spotting. And we just really worked in the United States and then in Antarctica as well, skydiving onto glaciers, polar plateau, in different places. And it's precision. We had a target.
Yeah.
And we didn't mess around. We also learned how to cargo drop a container, big container, for emergencies, for the mishap down below. And within that container, we had our medical gear. We had a doctor on the team. We had a hospital corpsman. And then we were all trained for extreme.
Sure.
And then the fun part, JD, was the survival training. And I did a lot of training, and we got a lot of training from another group that was down there. Were Kiwis at Scott Base, as they say.
Right.
And those cats, man, these guys are all from the Hermitage, in the South Island that's on Mount Cook in New Zealand. And they were the real McCoy. You know, they're the descendants of Edmund Hillary. Yeah. These guys are like, And even at the time, I became good friends with Gary Ball. Gary Ball, well, anyway, they were talking about a kid back home. They just go, who is that kid? That tall, lanky kid? Yeah. His name's Rob. Well, what's his last name? Someone says Hall. Yeah, Rob Hall. That kid is going to be something. Rob Hall became quite famous. And Into Thin Air is really about him and his team. And he ended up staying with a friend. He died on Everest. But he and Gary, at the time, just before that, not long after Gary had been in Antarctica, they formed Adventures Unlimited, which they took people up. You know, they were paid to take people up, get people up Everest. Mm-hmm. All of this leads into my curiosity that, you know, wanting to leave Vermont, wanting to see beyond the horizon. To me, you know, I go through areas where there's a tree line and above, and I just say, I'm going up there. That's where I want to be. And so it's just that. The biggest lesson I learned in the service, on top of the discipline, the resolve, the resilience, the knowledge, skill, capacity, learning a little bit about capacity, about how much you can do and realize you can do a lot more as you're traversing glaciers and you're wiped out, or, you know, hypothermia is kind of setting in a little bit and you're getting a little wacky and what to do. And experiencing these things is we jump for the Blue Angels show. So the Blue Angels, you know, the Blue Angels pilots, and they do air shows. Well, we did one at Point Mugu in California. And boy, we were hot. We felt, I mean, the egos were right up there.
Sure.
And not long after that, I was really feeling pretty cocky. I've got a lot of jumps, and now there's younger guys, less experienced guys on the team, and teaching them. And I've become a survival instructor. And the helo is turning. It's going to take 3 of us up to do a jump. And there was a guy that was working out as a new jump master. So we had a jump master in training, and myself. And so 3 of us. One guy's on the left side of the helo in the door. I'm on the right side of the door, and the jump master's in the center. I didn't tie in. I just sat in the door. I thought, I don't have to tie in. I've got a parachute on. We get up. We're on streamer run. We're going over the Camarillo Mountains, and I'm in the door. My legs are in the breeze. I'm not touching the skid. There's a skid. Yeah. The helicopter took a very sharp right bank turn, and I slid out the door. My right foot caught the skid. My left foot was going. I was like on my knees, pushing myself, grabbing to get back in. I'd never been so frightened in all my life.
Oh, you didn't actually fall. You were able to recover. Oh my God.
I recovered. I didn't, because if I had, because we were going over boulders and mountain areas. We weren't, we were at couple thousand feet.
Sure.
But still, it wasn't enough to
No, yeah, right.
To get it to pop and to be safe.
Right.
And I just lost control of myself. I was shaking. Helicopter evened out. And I said, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? What are you doing? And I was shaking. I heard, hey, you all right? And Paul, the guy was in the other door, and I, just gave a thumbs up, like, bullshit. I was not.
Right.
Oh, man. And I said, why are you doing this? And I said, you've got answer. You don't want to do that. Answer. And I said, transportation. Transportation came to mind. You're a member of the Antarctic Pararescue team. This is transportation. This is not a show.
Yeah.
There is purpose to this.
Right.
Now, buckle up and pay attention and drop your effing ego.
Yeah.
There is nothing sparkly about this. This is a mission. And don't ever do this again. I totally calmed down. And later I realized you had a purpose. There's a reason for the team. You believed in it. You trained. You had all these little objectives below this big purpose. And that has stayed with me and has gone with me whenever I've been tapped on the shoulder. Why are you directing this show at the Kennedy Center? It's for the organization. It's a nonprofit. Yes, it's high candle power people, but there's a purpose to it. And so you need, though you've never directed a show, I mean, and this is at the Kennedy Center in the Opera House, you need to focus on these other pieces, these mini objectives within this purpose. And that's the way it's been for me. And the Navy was a big one. And going from the Navy into acting, well, on my exit with my CO, I was a yeoman. And then I became survival. I was teaching the air crew and about how to rip a plane apart, what to do, what to look for, signs of all, you know, how to deal with things, how to work with us, how to, you know, work alone until there was help.
Yeah.
And what to look for, blah, blah, blah. Very exciting, you know, doing a jump at the South Pole. Incredible.
Yeah.
Just incredible. It was minus 59 degrees. The tail ramp, we always jumped out the tail ramp of the C-130, which was great. We jumped with SEAL teams in California, in Browning Field. And those guys were making their first jumps at 12,000 feet. We made our first at, 3,000 static line. And these guys are jumping out with a buddy. But anyway.
Well, talk a little more about that. Like first thing that comes to my mind, even if you come up at, 12.5 in the middle of summer, it's still a little cool out, So I can't imagine being minus 50 or minus 60. What kind of gear did you wear? Like, what did you do to prevent frostbite on the way down? And like, talk a little bit about that.
Very cool question, because there was real concern about it, and because there was not the gear for skydivers. So we got a one-piece quilted suit, layered suit, and had things below it. Ultimately, I usually jumped with an anorak. I jumped with New Zealand climbing gear.
Okay.
Because and mountaineering boots, the whole, triple layer boots or double layer boots, whichever one I was wearing. But for the South Pole jump, we all had red suits on and plenty of layers underneath. So we're wearing wool and ripstop nylon. There was no Gore-Tex back then.
Right.
And so we had Dachstein gloves. They're worsted wool. They're all like 3/8 of an inch thick. It's a mitt. Ridiculous. I'm telling you, ridiculous. Plastic glove into that and an outer layer over that, over the Dachstein wool glove. And as long as we had our thumbs, we had rip cords.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. How did you pull your rip cord?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a rip cord. And one of the dangers of jumping in Antarctica is that you have a metal housing for that rip cord that has pins stuck to the rip cord that are holding the parachute together. You pull it out, a pilot ship pops out, and there's a sleeve, and your canopy opens. We were jumping Paracommanders. The Stratostars just came out. Clouds came out maybe a year later. We had one Stratostar. We did not use it at the South Pole. We were testing it. The opening of Stratostars, there's a 5-cell ram air canopy in the beginning. It was almost like a prototype. It could knock you out. It was such a bang opening that it just rattled people. So we put that to one side, and of course it's been developed since.
Sure.
Because I'm talking 1975,
right?
76, 77. And so we were jumping Paracommanders, high performance canopy, beautiful canopy, steerable and whatnot. So we're on the back of the C-130, and our chief was making his 1,000th jump. So we were celebrating that. Yeah. As a part of this jump. It was the first time we were jumping with navigational aids. So we were watching, it was weird watching, the light. It's red, stand by, green, go.
Sure.
And, but we couldn't get the tail ramp open on the C-130 over the South Pole. It was frozen. So the air crew chief figured out, got the hand crank, and we're hand cranking this baby open. And then you got to understand, the South Pole was sitting just under 10,000 feet of ice thickness from terra firma.
Right.
It's minus 59 where we are in the air, you know? And we're opening up the tail ramp. There's portable oxygen. Paul, my climbing mate and good pal, Paul Deering, and I were the only ones that we didn't feel we needed oxygen. We were okay, but we took turns, and everybody's trying to get this tail ramp open. Yeah. and as it does, I mean, just, you know, the stuff flies, and in the cold, you just suddenly, it grips you. Well, I'm number 7 to jump South Pole in the lineup. There were a couple of jumps before. I think one was in 57. An Air Force sergeant did a static line. And then 2 other jumps with Chief Spaulding, who was getting his 1,000th jump. He had jumped. This is his 3rd jump at the South Pole.
Jeez.
And he had jumped with one other guy one time and then a couple other guys. And anyway, it added up there. My number was number 7. I jumped out, twirled. We all were going to go for at least, you know, 10 seconds was pushing it for a free fall because of the altitude and the cold. The first thing that happened, my outer liner flew off my hand, my right hand, and my hand just was like froze. And I was going, oh, you know, I was in a free fall position, turned around, looked where I was. And I was just saying, get your thumb out, just hold your thumb out. And I just popped the canopy. And with the adrenaline, I swear my hand froze and thawed by the time I got down to the ground, to the ice. But it was thrilling.
Yeah.
I mean, it was another jump, but there were uncertainties that came up.
Right.
You see, and that's the nature of being in Antarctica. And it was some of the things that I was able to experience and understand. You know, once there's no more information, you make a decision.
Right.
You know, and you get the information and you're situationally aware and you do what you can do. And okay, the tail ramp's not open. Doesn't mean we're going to nix the jump. Open the tail ramp.
Right.
And what does it take? Okay, if people need oxygen, feeling dizzy, okay, everybody good? Everybody's good. And there it's open. And
yeah, I mean, it's already an inherently dangerous activity.
Correct.
Now, when you pile on, you know, extreme cold weather and, you know, all that stuff, I mean, it just had to be crazy. I mean,
well, you know, for us, it's like someone saying, well, man, that was really risky. For the people involved, we're not thinking risk.
Sure.
We're not thinking crazy. We're thinking get the objective.
Right.
Get the door open. Objective. Line up. Watch the light. You know, there's just things you don't have time to comment on what's going on. You have only time to pursue the action.
Right.
And you move. And in Antarctica, if you don't move, you're dead.
Yeah.
You freeze. Period. I mean, you got to move. Get out of the wind. You got to cover yourself. You got to have water. You got to have liquids. It's got to be warm. And you just do not hesitate.
Yeah.
These little things, you know, and you just take care of them. So it was epic. We had a sense that there was going to be a whiteout. We didn't know how quickly it was going to come in. And it's amazing because you can be looking in one direction and it's blue sky in Antarctica. Sun is just lit up and it's just pristine. And then suddenly something hits the back of your head. It's wind. And you turn around and it's like a dust storm. You're enveloped.
Man.
It's just like it overtakes you.
Yeah.
And I've spent 3 days in a tent. Fortunately, it was we were testing equipment. It was the way we got our gear.
Yeah.
MSR was a new company, Mountain Safety Research out of Seattle.
Sure.
And we had their first stove.
Nice.
We had the first tent, a dome tent.
Yeah.
There was, they say, oh, it can handle up to, maybe 80-mile-an-hour winds. Well, we had it in 80-mile-an-hour winds. And for a couple of days, not always the wind, but it was just, I have pictures that are just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Where all of our communications just froze. We had ranger communications.
Yeah. How was the sleeping bags? Did you have nice warm sleeping bags, or how'd that go?
Oh, no. Hollybar was trying to get us some stuff back then. I don't really know much about Hollybar. I'm totally into sleeping bags now.
Sure.
we just we did double mummy bags.
Okay.
And we were sleeping on, I don't know, a quarter of an inch, styrofoam stuff.
Right.
I mean, it was just crazy.
I know.
I've got an R19 or 21 thermal rest pad I can put on top of ice and I'm fine.
Right.
Not like that back then. And then we made in the parachute loft, we made sacks to put the 2 bags in, and then had a sack over all of that. And we just kind of like a bivvy.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a sweet bivvy that we designed our own. And
I was going to say, back then, it's like you just had to figure it out. I mean,
exactly.
Man.
Think Edmund Hillary. I mean, there was no Gore-Tex.
Right.
There was no, the Kiwis had a canvas, like a ripstop sailcloth that was waxed as an anorak.
Yeah.
And those things were great, big, bulky things where you had to get string to tie around your elbows and your upper arm and around your knees so everything wouldn't flap in the breeze. Because they were just big, baggy things to put over down.
Yeah.
Fortunately, down was incredible because it's zero humidity in Antarctica. And so the perspiration is just from you, and you learn to regulate that quickly. You just do. You find out what the same was in the desert. We're talking, the extreme and the cold. I've been in pretty hot, 118 on camels in Wadi Rum in Jordan.
Yeah.
When Miles and I will talk about that maybe in a minute.
Yeah.
So you learn it's not just survival, but it is survival, because if you don't do it, you may not survive. I mean,
but the thing about guys like us, when you in that situation, survival is part of it, but you're not just out there having a good time. I mean, you have a mission to do, like you keep alluding to. You have a mission to do. You have an objective. You can't just sit down and survive. I mean, you have to operate in that environment. And
correct.
So it's not just about, okay, you jumped and you got on the ground and now you're just hanging out. It's like, no, now you got to go do something. That's what people kind of forget sometimes.
It's transportation. It's like you drove your car.
Right. Exactly.
And you're there, and now it's time to do what you need to do.
Right.
And so the jumping, the skydiving was brilliant. It was fun. We did it for the Blue Angels. We were going to jump out of the Goodyear blimp, one of them out of California. Weather put us out of the picture of that.
Dang.
We were going to do a halo jump, same thing. We were all set, fully outfitted to do a 25,000-foot drop. And again, with purpose. It was about hitting the target. Now the target is 20 feet by 20 feet.
Right.
and you're coming at it from 3-4 miles in the sky, maybe more.
Yeah.
And you've got to know what you're doing to get there.
Right.
So, and then once you get there, that's just getting there.
Yeah.
Then you got to engage.
The very beginning of the whole thing is just getting there. That's
correct.
But to your point, just that transportation piece takes so much planning and so much calculating, and like you said, there's no one piece that is more important than the other. I mean, you have to if you screw up that initial insertion, the whole mission's gone.
And you had to protect yourself. It's like what I was doing by just cavalierly putting my rear end on the side of the helicopter and sitting in the door, and that's cool. There's a cable right there. I could have just cabled in.
Right.
And I said, nah, this is great. I'm just in the doorway and looking at the ocean, and then we're back over the mountains, and then all of a sudden the bank turned. It's like, dude.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
this gets back to I was on my way out the door from the Navy, and my CO, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, I didn't grow up with a dad, and part of that, I mean, I would love to have had that, but it also put me in a position to learn how to do things quickly. Like my mother coming to me and she's saying, "We need a door on the side of the barn." Mm-hmm. "I think you can do it. What do you think?" "Okay, Mom." She said, "Good. Now here, take these nails and you bend them straight. And when you've used them, we'll see about getting more." I was 11 years old.
Wow.
And I did. And I got them out there and I got a board and I was trying to, and I go, you can't bend a nail by hammering it on a board. You've got to get something soft. I mean, and I adapted.
Yeah.
So
what an invaluable lesson, though. I mean, as an 11-year-old, to like, you just put in those positions. I mean, and I often say it, we don't give kids enough credit. I think people kind of underestimate the ability of children sometimes. If you give them a little bit of guidance and a little bit of help, I mean, they can do
encouragement.
Wonders. Yeah, right, exactly. Empowerment, encouragement, all that stuff is perfect. Yeah.
It was an individual. My mother, great respect. And what I said was, "Yes, ma'am."
Right.
Everything was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir. Teachers, I mean, in the beginning,
sure.
Because we were a military family.
Right.
That's the way we were, with the years of my dad, that's just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't tortuous. It was just, that's being polite.
Sure.
"Yes, ma'am." "Okay, yes, ma'am." But I went for the first time, what is, how am I going to do this? And it's like, okay, I know there are cross pieces and blah, blah, blah. And I just figured it out.
Yeah.
So I was adapting. And it was a tap. Somebody asking me to do something that I've never done. And that's the way my whole life has been.
Yeah. Things
that I've never done. I never thought about doing until someone said, "Oh, you should try this."
Right.
Really? You were very good, So my CEO on the way out, to bookend this naval experience, said, "I will give you anywhere in the world, son." And he said, "Son." We had a great relationship. He wasn't that much older, but he said, "Son." I said, you know, he said, "Well, that's not going to happen." I said, "Sir, if I go get the GI Bill, go through university and apply for jet school, I just said, it's not going to happen, son. You're 6'3". Your eyes are bad. I don't have my contacts or any glasses on because I'm close enough I can see you. And it's not going to happen. But I'll put you on a desk in Austria. Where would you like to go?" And I said, "Sir, I'm going to move on. Paul and I are thinking about being smoke jumpers in the Pacific Northwest." And he said, "Well, that sounds exciting. Thank you very much, sir." And, it was a nice party. And Paul didn't get out for another 6 months. And so I went shrimping with my brother in the Gulf of Mexico. He was a rig man. And it was the hardest work I've ever done. I've done a lot of hard work, but it was the wildest people as well. Anyway, I was on my way. We were from that, and I called my mother, and she said, "Now, what are you going to do?" So I'm going to go to Santa Barbara. I think I'll start school. I don't know she said, "You should study acting." I said, "Acting?" She said, "You did a couple of shows in the community theater. I am telling you that if you want to learn about people and places and experiences, that'd be a great way. I mean, Shakespeare." Yeah. Shakespeare. That's history. That's kings. You could be a king. You can be a prince. You can be Iago in Othello. I'm just going, okay. She said, "Trust me." I did. So I did theater as a major in Santa Barbara in school and English as a minor. And again, I felt like I'd been tapped to do this and see it through, and I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched your clip reel. It was I didn't realize you were in so many things, and you know, it's not just like you were in some pretty big productions. Like yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's been since I've been in New Mexico. In the theater I was in on stage, I ended up, you know, the question came to, and I was invited to go to Hollywood. They call it going to Hollywood. Go down and see these managers and these fellas who lived together. I mean, they were just very well known, and they had some stars that they were taking care of, and they'd seen me act. And they found out everything they could about me. They knew my girlfriend's name. They knew everything.
Yeah.
And when I talked with them, they told me what I had to do if I wanted to be a star. And I left. I mean, this was a gorgeous home in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
They were in caftans, and I mean, literally, there was a crystal ball of cocaine on the coffee table, and the artwork. I mean, there was a Picasso mural. I mean, it was just all of that stuff was there, all the signs. And I just wrote him back and I said, thank you so much. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to New York to learn my craft, because I was into it. And I said, if you're into it and you really want to go into films, know what you're doing.
Yeah. And
so I studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and it was torturous. And I thought, I have really blown it. I was coming with having done Petruchio and Taming of the Shrew. I did all these things in Santa Barbara, and I got a lot of attention. Again, it's like skydiving, got attention, jumped with the Blue Angels, and you get yourself into trouble.
Yeah.
Well, I was with an acting teacher, and she didn't stand for anything but real. Do a scene. What do you think? Well, I don't know. Well, you do. I thought it was good. She said, no. You're thinking too much. You're planning it. Live in the moment.
Yeah.
And so all of these things kind of are connecting. Be fully present. Be real. And so I can do that in acting. I thought they were all just kind of acting.
Right.
And she said, no acting. Be you in the situation. Once I got a hang of that, it was just glorious.
Yeah.
And my first job, I got an equity show with Ken Howard, who was the SAG president for a while, and he was a big name, and it was wonderful. Came back from that after I'd graduated from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and this was all like 10 days after graduating. I got my first equity show.
Wow.
I got an agent when I came back from that equity show, and they said, look, you know, you've got a nice look. We call it white bread. What does that mean?
Right.
Well, you're blonde, you're blue, and you're white. And I said, okay, all right. They said, but be prepared. There's a lot of rejection to get commercials. Mm-hmm. We're going to handle you for commercials. I said, okay. And they said, you know, you'll get 20 auditions, maybe you'll get one callback. Out of a number of callbacks, you'll book. Okay. So just, you know, strap in. My fourth audition, I got the commercial. It was Kodak, which was a camera.
Sure.
You know, I'm going to get you with the Kodak disc. It was a new thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then I got Coca-Cola, and then I got Molson's beer, and then I got Stroh's beer. Stroh's beer was first, then Molson's beer after that. I mean, I did Gatorade, you know, playing a catcher. So my point is that I was in a groove.
Sure.
And I auditioned after I'd done that first equity show for a company, and it was Lee Strasberg's son. Lee Strasberg was a very famous acting coach, mm-hmm. and instructor. And he was at the studio theater for a while, and then he had his own, and he's just worked with Al Pacino, Marilyn Monroe. I mean, just all the old names, many people.
Right.
Well, he passed on. His son and his son's wife started a repertory company, and I got an audition. And they told me what they wanted me to come in with was a monologue from this show. It's okay. And so it was just him. There was a light on a stand in the theater, and he was standing on the stage to one side. He goes, hi, good, okay. Go ahead. Going, oh, this is my first audition, professional audition. So I started. I'd given him my picture and my resume. I remember my resume had some things on it from acting school, the one show with Ken Howard that I just done, and had skills. And it said Antarctic Pararescue Team. You know,
he's like, what?
I could type, I could ride a horse, I could swim, I could ski, you know, blah blah blah. But it said Antarctic. And so I don't know, I could have been less than 60 seconds into my spiel as an audition. And he says, stop. And he's looking at my resume. He's going, stop. Come here. And I was going, oh boy, I've heard about this. It's called rejection. It's called, you know, sorry, can't use you.
Yeah.
And he said, tell me about Antarctica. And I had a few things to say, and I knew that he was a brown belt, and we had a little conversation, and he said, great, it's really good to meet you. And I said, oh, thank you so much, Mr. Strasberg. Call me John. John, thank you a lot. Well, so long. And then I turned around and went, wait a minute, what just happened? You know, what's going on? And he said, oh, you've got it. I do?
Nice.
Yeah, you do. We'll be in touch with your agent and stuff like that. So
awesome.
Tapped, and I had 3 years with that, and did a lot of commercials. And fortunately, the repertory company that had major, wonderful actors in it, I was so fortunate. I was kind of like the male ingenue. You know, usually it's a girl, but a lot of the shows had the young lead guy. Mm-hmm. And the people playing my mom and my dad were known. Geraldine Page, Mason Adams, Brian Clark. Just they mean in the theater world, it means something back then. You know, it's just working with wonderful people and learning. But I couldn't raise a family on it. So then I started doing production work. And it came as a tap. Someone said, we've been doing this jazz show and we're not real pleased with this director. And I think he mentioned that he knows you and you've worked with him. And I did. And I saw the jazz, this show is called the Jazz Nativity. And it was playing in a big church. And I thought, and I know the director, and they said, well, what do you think of the director? I said, he's not getting the spirit of what you have going. And so my wife and I talked with these people, and they said, well, why don't you direct it? I said, oh, okay. You know, and my first show, it was at Avery Fisher Hall, which is a big performing arts. Lincoln Center is a big performing arts, and they have the opera and symphony, and they also have, and ballet, and they also have Avery Fisher Hall for shows, and then a smaller space for jazz shows. But we did it in Avery Fisher Hall. It was my first show, and learning the different disciplines attached. I've been in a lot of shows, and you know, you have designers, and you have light designers and set designers. You have stage management, many pieces to the pie, right, to do a production. And so that was my first one. And then my wife and I started from that, a production company, and we just were able to take the training. She had also been trained as an actress, and she had 2 children, and I had 2 children at the time. And so we combined children and our acting experience and became a production company, and we did very well. Nice. And we ended up with a foundation out of DC and doing things at the Kennedy Center. And so it was always taking and learning more, taking these pieces from the lessons. Probably the most important one, JD, was ego. you know?
Yeah.
I know I respond to,
Right.
because I didn't get a lot of it, or I don't know why, but it means that it worked,
Sure.
you know, an applause or a note. But I'm not doing it for that, but it always feels so wonderful when your efforts, you know,
Well, it's that validation. I mean, just,
yeah,
I'm sure you got it when you're in the Navy, just like we all kind of like, we're looking
there it is.
for our supervisors to say, "Hey, good job out there." That kind
Right.
of motivates you to do more. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. And my commanding officer on my exit interview, my exit interview was with the commanding officer. It
Sure.
wasn't with my chief.
Right.
He said, no, I want Jones to come in, because he wanted to make it clear that he would put me anywhere. And that was appreciation. Yes, I got commendations. I got medals. I got, Sailor of the Quarter, because when I went down there, I guess my purpose is to serve.
Sure.
And when I was, doing a show, you're serving a lot of things and the community. And then when you're directing, there's always someone above. There's someone footing the bill.
Yeah.
But that someone's the one that went, hey, I'm so-and-so. I've heard about blah, 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 blah. Can we talk? And I'm going, of course. And then suddenly this gift is handed. And I was handed the chief operating officer of a foundation. Now that was the wildest, because that meant I would be at a desk. And then I would be in an office.
Yeah.
That's not outside.
Right.
Even with doing theater, I was still engaged with running in Central Park. I was bicycling and stuff, but running a foundation in Washington, D.C., Colin Powell's wife was the chairman of the board, and the president of it was, the former Secretary of Education and drug czar's wife. Everybody connected. And that was the one that was saying, we want you to run the foundation. We had done shows for this, people, my wife and I, but then they came back to me and say, we want you to be the chief operating officer of the whole deal. And that was from the work that had been done. So
right.
It's, more, when I go up like this, I'm talking about just expansion of knowledge, expansion of, is it capacity, capability, something.
Yeah.
It's not me going, I've got to send a nice note and ask for this job. I've never asked for a job.
Yeah. It's a testament to your work, though. Regardless of what you do, whether it be acting, directing, parachuting, whatever, people see something in you and they're like, this guy, because at that point, at that level, they're not looking at a resume. They're not looking at, these specific qualifications. They're looking at the person and they're like, man, this guy really knows how to manage this production or whatever it is. And they saw that in you and they're like, I want you to run this foundation the way you ran that production, because it was obviously probably flawless, So I could see that.
It truly was spectacular. I've stood, Dionne Warwick back then. I think she's still alive, but she did so many incredible. That's what friends are for.
Sure.
She's done, and she is, as an individual, I've worked with her, many stars, but this in particular, a star that, and a voice that is just so spectacular. Well, she was going to sing at the Kennedy Center, and Colin Powell and Alma introduced her, and she came out to sing "That's What Friends Are For."
Wow!
And she had flown in from Buenos Aires, and she was not well, and she was totally camouflaged. You couldn't tell who she was. I was with James Earl Jones. He was the host, and we were going through the script. And this figure behind him says, "Hey, baby." And he's like, James Earl Jones.
Yeah, for sure.
And he turns around and he sees this woman with studded, sparkly ball cap and enormous sunglasses. You can't tell who it is or what it is.
Right.
Very slender. I met her backstage. They said Dionne's coming backstage for her entrance. She was wearing a red velvet with a train behind it. Mm-hmm. dress that was fitted. And an assistant was holding her hand. She'd had the arm of the assistant. I knew she hadn't been well. And what she said with James L. Jones, well, this is Mr. Jones, and he is the director. And she came over to me and she said, okay, baby, you're going to take care of me now, aren't you? And I said, you know it. Anything that you need, Dion. Yeah. The assistant will take you to your hotel room is blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
And so she was set. She was backstage. She was so stunningly beautiful. And I put my hand out and she took my hand and she just held both her hands on my arm. And then she just was standing there and listening to Colin Powell saying the words. And I looked at her and she looked over at me. I said, there you go. And she said, thank you. And she was like a different person.
Just turned it on.
She went out. Yes. Went on, and this is at the Kennedy Center Opera House. We see shows there, but when you're there, it's just so amazing. Yeah. It's just, she walked out and she was in that stunning dress, went right to the center. Everyone in the audience, the place was packed, stood up applauding, and it's just, I guess what I'm talking about is that it's knowing how to deal with people. And it's like doing the jazz show. Jazz musicians are very different cats, especially the pros. They've had years of what they do. And to get those fellas to come to the front of the stage and play, like for their solo, they don't want to do that.
Yeah. They
want to hang back and just be discovered kind of in the crowd. And then they kind of come out a little bit. But it's learning how to work with people. And I think that with the acting, that's what people have seen. And the taps have come. And I'm saying this not to toot my horn. I'm saying this to your listeners, that being ready for your finest hour. And I hear it, I don't have time to read. I've got kids. I've got this. I had kids too. Mm-hmm. We had 4 different households of children, and they were coming and going and this and that,
sure.
And bills and desires, but being in the present moment and fully engaged with where you are with a sense of purpose, just to do that, you will be seen, you will be awarded, and you will find, it's not appreciated. You will find satisfaction in that and knowing that you've done well. Because I've been at high levels and I've been at levels where I've been alone and having to work alone and figure things out alone. And that was necessary for me to learn about myself. It's like doing solo sunrise summits up mountains. In the beginning, 2:30 in the morning, out in the wilderness. There is a trail, but you're in the wilderness. You've got 7 miles to get up to the top of this mountain before sunrise. It's a 3,700-foot elevation gain. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down in saddles and blah, blah. You could run into wind and run into 80-mile-an-hour winds. But it's learning a level of capacity and seeing it through and also failing, turning back. Learning.
Some people cheat themselves, and I don't want to say like shame on them for not trying, but some people cheat themselves out of the opportunity to experience that success because they're so scared to fail. But that's the whole point. Like you just said, sometimes you're not going to make it. Sometimes you're going to set out and do something and it's not going to work out. That doesn't mean, that old adage where they say you don't fail until you stop. If you keep going, you're just learning at that point, but
I know that one of my icons, T.E. Lawrence is it. We'll get into it maybe, because that's the impetus to the book, A Line in the Sand, that Miles Spencer and I wrote a year ago. The other icon is George Mallory, who was a climber in the 1920s, and he was a British fella that wanted to get to the top of Everest. And literally, I mean, just this last June, a year ago, was marked the 100th year that he was lost. He went with another fella for the final ascent in 1924, June 1924. And, you know, to do these big expeditions, he had to get funding. So he's with the Royal Geographical Society and these British, you know, men with their pipes and their,
right.
you know, formal wear coats and this and that. And, you know, why do you need all this money? Why are you doing this? He's attributed with saying, why do you want to get up this Everest? And he says, because it's there. And what he followed up with as a comment is not as well known, but to me, it's a much bigger statement. It's not the mountain we conquer, it is ourselves. And that mountain is relative. It's like adventure is relative.
Right.
Adventure to me, and I've talked with guys who say, well, when are you going to do Everest? I go, what? I'm not, I'd like to do the Matterhorn.
Yeah, right.
If I was, you know, I really would, because it's just the beauty in Switzerland and all that.
Sure.
But conquering self, adventure is relative. Adventure could be putting a child into a baby carriage and getting across the street. Before you go, you've got, you know, the little things to eat, drink for the child, for you, proper clothing. You've planned this out. It's an adventure.
Sure.
And you're going out into the park, and you don't know what's around the corner. There's uncertainty.
Right.
And some people say, "Well, I can't do that." You know, the cars or the people, the buses, the you know. Mm. But by doing that, one increases the conquering of self, and it's actually not conquering it; it's just understanding it,
right,
and learning that your world is bigger than just this.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
And I've loved exploring, and that's something that's very important to me. And I really do like. I found that the taps have always come from people in need. They had a need. They met my need. You know, maybe mine was financial, but I never thought in terms of it as money. I mean, I was paid. I've always been paid for the things that I do, but it met their need. And so purpose has been big. And my meeting Miles Spencer, as I said, the co-author of A Line in the Sand, was, as it says in that book, where the two characters in the book, Magnus and Finn, meet. It's historical fiction, but much of it is spot on, is exactly about the way Magnus and Finn met is the way Miles and I met. And it was just lifelong friends the day we met. And it had to do with, we're different kinds of people in some ways, and in some ways not. And we've done things, we've done television shows together. We did Money Hunt, which people can look up. There's a Wikipedia and a page and some shows actually available. That was on PBS. It was kind of like the first Shark Tank. And Kayak for a Cause. That was another. These are Miles's brainstorms.
Yeah.
I'm production. Miles has got a brainstorm, and he's so about organization, the outline of things, and finding funding. And Kayak for a Cause was truly a brilliant idea. The model was to inspire people to kayak across Long Island Sound. So it was out of Norwalk, Connecticut, the last Saturday of July for 10 years. This organization, it started with a bet. Miles and a friend of mine and a close friend of Miles were bet to go paddle across in a kayak Long Island Sound. It's like 12, 13 miles from calf pasture to the meadows on the other side. Well, they did and came back. And then the next year, there were like 7 people. And the next year, there were like 20. You know, by the time I got with it, it was their 6th year. They had done their 5th year, and Miles called me in because I was in the area, And he told me about it, and he pulled me on board. And so I handled the production for the first time. And so we started bringing in big bands, big names, Neville Brothers, Dickie Betts, Great Southern, the Wailers, not super big names, but big enough names that, And so the kayakers would form a pod of 10 kayakers. They knew they were going to paddle across Long Island Sound. They had to pay a certain amount to pay for their kayak and their flotation devices and this and that, and then raise money that we would give to charities. And, I think my first year, maybe there were 3 charities. The 7th year, we worked up to 5 charities that we were giving money to. So the kayakers would form a pod. They'd raise money. There was a way to keep track of who was raising more money than the other. So there was competition, raising money. Well, we worked up to 313 kayakers launching at one time in the morning. It's actually over a half-hour period. You can't just say, blow a whistle and everybody starts going.
A crowded.
First of all, it's a quarter of a mile down the beach, and you've got all these kayaks,
Right.
And anyway, the logistics were just spectacular. I mean, it was just, oh man. We had air support. We had a chase boat with each pod. And the pods had, names to the pods, from the pirates to the wenches to, how many? There were 30 pods.
Right.
So they all had a name, and it was all quirky and unique. And everybody very pleased of how much money they raised their pod. And they would kayak across, come back with transport boats. And in that evening on the beach, we would have a stage and a band, and then we would award. We had food. We had steak and lobster,
nice
chicken, that kind of stuff for everybody, for like 1,500 people.
Wow!
And we would hand out checks to 5 charities, local charities. There could be chapters from a national or international group, Builders Beyond Borders, several women's organizations, Paul Newman's group that was in Connecticut, and $50,000 each.
Nice.
Raised. So $250,000 of what was raised went to charities.
That's awesome.
And then we had the Neville Brothers, and then we had local bands that would play. I would tell these guys, look, man, you've got 13 minutes. You're part of the opening act to the Neville Brothers. Would you like it? Oh, I said, now when I say 13 minutes, it'll be exact. It'll be 13 minutes. You come on, we'll have it set up. It'll be seamless.
Yeah.
And people loved it. So that's Adventure with Purpose. When I was running that foundation in DC, this is before Kayak for a Cause. It was right after Money Hunt. Money Hunt closed down because the .com just blew up. We were all lined up to do models in 6 different countries. And it was the .com timing that made it so valuable, because there were so many companies looking for money and so many phenomenal ideas that were coming through. So we put 2 companies on the show, and they would defend their business plan. They would present it, and Miles and a co-host, and then a guest mentor would decide whether they would fund, which company of the 2 they would support. They choose based on their idea and the amount of money. And it was just a fabulous model. Anyway, I ran the foundation in DC, took my family there, bought a different house, sold one house, bought another house. And coming back through, seeing Miles, it had been 4 years. I hadn't seen him and been in touch. And I heard about Kayak for a Cause. He'd already been doing it for 4 or 5 years. And first thing he said, it was 4th of July. And he said, hey, you know anything about T.E. Lawrence? You ever read 7 Pillars of Wisdom? Do you know about that? And I said, yeah. He said, no way. Really? You do? I'm not beyond the movie. I said, yeah. Well, the movie inspired me. But I was looking for a one-man show. That's exactly right. I go, what do you mean exactly right? He said, you should play him. I said, I decided not to do a one-man show because T.E. Lawrence was 5 feet 5.5. I'm sick. Come on, Miles.
Yeah.
You know, he said, get a bigger chair. I said, no. The guy, you know, his drive and being 5 feet 5.5 as a man, it was all part of him,
Sure.
of his excellence and what he put himself through. We ended up, he said, well, we should do a show about T.E. Lawrence. I just thought you could play him. And I said, no. Well, we ended up meeting a Broadway producer, presenting the idea to her, and she bit hard enough that we've been through 4 writers. We're with a wonderful writer now, a woman, the only American, everyone else was British names, but they just could not give it the time required to know the research about T.E. Lawrence and the Arab Revolt. And so not long after the meeting with the Broadway producer in 2005, Miles and I agreed that we had to go there. If we were going to do this, we have to go there. But also, Lawrence was the only one that we could think of in 2005 that he loved the people. Yeah. He loved the region. Everything we read about was his appreciation for the land, the different cultures. He didn't try to change them, you know? And then you get into the Paris Peace Conference and his drive to reverse the Sykes-Picot Agreement that was written in 1916 before the end of the war that divided the Middle East up. The war's raging in France, but in the Middle East, there was a war, but they decided, the French and the British got together and said, you know, if we win this war, what do you want? It was very contrary to the way anyone was thinking about if someone won in France, what do you want? We want retribution. We want Germany to pay. and in the war in the Middle East, they convinced through Lawrence the Arabs to fight for their freedom. And yet here they're making an agreement, the allies between themselves, about what they take, which was taking the freedoms away. And Lawrence was certainly not for that. I knew enough about that. Miles knew enough about that. And we knew that we wanted to follow him, use him as a guide. And so we trained for 8 months to do a trek to follow T.E. Lawrence's path and the Arabs in the war from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, along the Hejaz, along the Red Sea, up into the Gulf of Aqaba to Aqaba. The fort in Aqaba was a major win. If anyone has seen the movie, that was a major turning point in the war for the Arabs. And then getting to Damascus. So we did that trek in 2006 after intense training.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about like the logistics of it. Like how did you support yourselves? Like talk to me a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, we realized we wanted to do the trek. We thought of a month that we could take out of our life and do this. Mm-hmm. We used the same model for that we used for Kayak for a Cause for this Lawrence on Arabia is what we called it. And it was Miles and I going to the Middle East. So we would raise money and we would give a quarter of it to a foundation. And so we found the first thing. We had to find a foundation that we believed in. And we found it in Seeds of Peace. And I hope that in the show notes that you would include a link to Seeds of Peace.
Sure.
Because this is an organization that started in 93. The husband who had passed on, we met with Janet Wallach. Her husband, John, created this organization. He brought Palestinian and Israeli high school thought leaders together in Maine, United States, for the summer on a lake to have workshops in conflict resolution and spend a summer together. Same bunkhouses, wow. Be together. And it was a very successful organization. We call it Seeds of Hope in the book. And the characters that we that went to Seeds of Hope in our book, A Line in the Sand, are based on real people that we knew, that we met through Seeds of Peace.
Okay.
And so Abdu is Arab Muslim descent, and Jeremy is a Jew, Jewish. And so it was just like peeling an onion or peeling something. We knew we wanted to follow the path of Lawrence, so we came up with the areas that we wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized we knew we wanted to ride camels. We knew we wanted to get on a horse. We knew we were going to hike, but we knew we had to have local support.
Sure.
And with local support, we didn't want to go with some fancy organization to set us up with SUVs. In the book, we have an FJ SUV, and it's all spit shiny clean and all this stuff on it. It's not the way we went. And so we found a company, again, through a reference, our Caruso company, and they had just put the Chicago Symphony on at Machu Picchu.
Okay.
I thought, whoa, Miles has been to Machu Picchu. He said, that's a feat to do all that. And so we talked with Bob, the head of our Caruso at the time, our Caruso, and that's like Robinson Crusoe. I like, I like that.
Gotcha.
I like that. And we said we want to follow Lawrence's path as outlined in 7 Pillars of Wisdom from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We'll figure out how to get into the countries. We need support from point A to point B, C to D, and we know, we need support. And we would like local drivers, not agencies taking care of us, local people. That's as much as we know. We've just identified a risk assessment trainer for areas of conflict. And we'll get back to you with more specifics. But if you're going to take this on, you must get a copy. We'll send you a copy of 7 Pillars of Wisdom. We need you to read, to go through it, scan it, so you know what we're talking about. And so that was an initial call to our Caruso, and their fire was lit. They said, this is amazing. And so then we realized we had to get insurance, wives especially. Sure. The wives. Oh my goodness. Oh boy. It's like, your will, please.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't have a will. I was like, whoa, I never even thought of it.
Right.
She said, will, now.
Yeah.
And so we did that. And then we realized we needed some training. We were thinking, check into Blackwater. There was Blackwater, Triple Canopy, Centurion. There were a couple others, but those 3 were the big guys offering services,
right? Security
services to as a private company. Looked into it, realized no. We realized we needed to get insurance. So we called an international insurance company, Ackerman, and they led us to Jamie Lothar Pinkerton. And Jamie, former SAS, Irish Guard, retired major, had just been appointed by the Queen of England to be the private secretary of the Queen of England in the care of Prince Harry and Prince William.
Wow.
And so Ackerman said he is one of our partners and he does private training, and right up this alley, he's just worked with a couple of actors, and we didn't even get names, but we'll see if he would take this on. Well, they worked it out. We worked it out. We ended up talking with Jamie. Turns out he had just trained Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman for Long Way Around.
Oh, okay.
Their motorcycle trip.
Yeah.
And he's actually, in some of that footage, you can see Jamie in it in the beginning, in the first tape.
Wow.
So he was the focal point for clarity. And we made it clear to him, 1, we want to experience this trek as if we were locals. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, you've got checkpoints, and you've got borders, And honestly, the best way to do the borders is to fly. That's the best way. He said, no, we're not going to fly in. Initially, yes.
Sure.
But we're going to cross borders, and we want to do it on our own. We want to walk across the borders. And he said, okay.
Man.
You need to register with a consulate. We're not going to register with consulates. We're going under the wire. And so he took us for our word, and he trained us for all kinds of situational awarenesses and filled us in. We spent some nice amount of time on kidnap and ransom.
Sure.
Specifics. I don't need to get into it. I don't, stay low and,
right.
They're just things.
Yeah.
Why stay low? Well, everybody's nervous. Anyone comes in with a weapon, they're going to shoot. They shoot high. They end up shooting high. So always stay low.
Right.
When you go to a hotel, get in the back of the hotel on the first floor, never in the front.
Yeah.
Don't cross the street in the same place twice. Come in, check in if you're in a hotel or any kind of a place, and go out a different door. Don't go back and forth. Don't hang out anywhere. No hanging out.
Right.
Just move. And fortunately, with Seeds of Peace, we had an objective to get to different offices and to meet the chapters in the different countries. And from there, we could meet people that went through the camp, which was it's in our book.
Yeah.
And it gave us a focus. And from meeting a young man, and that's very happy, Abdullah Darandari in Jeddah, and he says, he said, my father wants to meet you. We don't know your father, but he would like to meet you. Can he come over? He's going to be here. He can come here. And so tell him, everybody has a flip phone.
Yeah.
And in 2006. And so we end up meeting parents. We end up hearing stories. And from that, we ended up getting work actually in Saudi Arabia, and working and doing an 8-day sea festival 2 years later.
Nice.
Just big, Formula 2000, intercontinental boat racing and hot air balloons. And, I was the lead producer with Miles and another guy. That's a whole other story, but also a part of our understanding of the area.
Sure.
And Saudi. Just back to the preparation. So we figured out we needed Tough Book. Panasonic Tough Book was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
We got maybe the second edition. It was just maybe a year old, but it was wonderful. We had the first 406 megahertz PLB, personal locator beacon.
Nice.
It's because I've been doing podcasts.
Nice.
That's what it looked like. This, flips out. That's the antenna. Open it up. Double hit. It triangulates, and there's instructions. You activate it in mortal danger. Period. That's it.
Who does that go
So
to?
we had that.
What signal? Like, who gets that signal?
It would depend upon where we were in the desert. It just triangulates with whatever back in 2006, whatever was happening up above, and it goes eventually to an office in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And there's instructions.
Gotcha.
And we had a lead person that knew exactly what to do. And through Ackerman, we had the level of insurance that would send in support. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
It was high level. And why? Jamie was clear within the borders of Saudi Arabia. He said, I'm not talking the royal family. I'm not talking with individuals, but within the borders. If you are abducted, you're gone.
Mm.
And there's enough of that has happened that nobody knows about. I know about, and others.
Yeah.
But it's not public knowledge. Colombia, they want $1 million. You pay $1 million. You get them. You go home. Not in Saudi. Jordan, peaceful. You'll love it. Make sure you go to here, go to there. When you hit them on, ba 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 ba. The road, which is the road to Baghdad, is very active, and you pay drivers, significant money depending upon what zone you're going into in Baghdad. And we weren't doing that. But in Syria, he said, it's dicey. He said, do you have your visas? No. You must have them before you'll be able to get into the country. And we were aware. So we did end up working that out. But he said Jordan was most westernized. And it was just before our leaving, 2 hotels were bombed in Amman. One of them is the one we were staying in.
Jeez.
We'd stayed in. In the bigger cities we stayed in, and we didn't want to hang out, and we wanted to make sure we were in an international hotel.
Right.
But we camped out. I'll get more into the gear. So that was the first time hearing that was the first, if there was a lump if there was just like are we going to go? Will we still stay there? And I was like, yeah. So we did. The other items in the backpack, we had a foldable solar panel, brand new. It was like the size of an 8 by 10, like a piece of paper, just folded out, set it in the sun, and it worked.
Nice.
It would keep things charged. We had a sat phone, big old heavy duty sat phone,
right.
And which helped a lot. We had an Osprey backpack, 35 liter. It's the only thing that we carried everything in. Change of clothes, and we planned a month. Sleeping bag, rolled up, pack light.
Sure. There
was a down, Western Mountaineering, excellent company. Wow. I have 3 of their from heavy duty, down, just wonderful down bags, and wind and water protected. So in the book, the crossing, once we got there, it was at the end, was the toughest one, the most eye-opening. To say nerve-wracking, to say aggressive, it was eye-opening. And that was crossing on the King Hussein Allenby Bridge into Israel. Mm. After being in a very quiet region of the world, there's no laughter, there's no dirty jokes, there's no smell of pot or anything. Right. There's no alcohol. There is alcohol. You can get alcohol. It's all black market, and back then it was very dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it's like now, but to get a bottle of Johnny Walker Red was 400 reals.
Well, I don't even know the exchange rate for that.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Still a lot. It's like, and I have some amazing stories about that, but and about an individual in the book that's reading, that's driving, that is drinking.
Oh.
that stopped the car, and he made a confession that 2 of the terrorists that went into the North Tower were from his village. And that is great for the book, the actual individual, and the timing and the scene was much more harrowing than that. It was truly, it just stops your breath.
Yeah.
And he was crying, and he was guzzling Johnny Walker, and he was a wreck. I must say that we went through 39 checkpoints, and the goal was to get to Damascus like in the Arab Revolt. So we went to, spun off to Petra, spun off to Jerash, to different castles. We went further north to see Crac de Chevalier, castle that Lawrence thought was the most, preserved Crusader castle in the world. And it was beautiful. And, during the Syrian conflict lately, I guess it was, 8 years ago, 10 years ago? One of the towers at Crac de Chevalier, a fighter jet bombed it because he thought there were rebels in it. It's just going, oh my God. Yeah. Something so old, so important. Well, we, do you have questions?
Well, I was going to say that region is just filled with stuff like that, like landmarks and history. And just the nature of the volatility of that area it's such a shame that all that stuff gets lost. I mean, a new group comes in, they don't like the monuments or the castle or the whatever it is because it's the old guys stuff and they tear it down. Like the Taliban did a lot of that stuff in Afghanistan, and it's just it's crazy how myopic those guys can be. You know what I mean? Like even when we go in there, you know, when I was in Afghanistan, you know, yeah, we did our best to survive, and we weren't too worried about anything if it meant, you know, that we were going to live or whatever, you know what I mean? But we did our best to try to preserve that kind of culture, preserve the, and it just seems like, depending on which faction it is or which tribe it is, they're like that. I don't care. We're going to get rid of it. And they don't have any foresight or any like, qualms about just taking out something that's like thousands of years old, or, you know, anyway.
And that's probably the biggest thing for myself that impressed me, that was impressed upon me, was walking through these areas. I always go back to General Patton. When in the movie, Patton says, I don't know, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something. He stands in this area and he's alone, and he takes a deep breath and he says, I can smell it. He can see what happened here. You know, he just knew. He's so filled with the knowledge of all the different battles. Yeah. The guy was amazing. I mean, as a kid, he went through the entire library reading things. I mean, he was just brilliant. And I felt the same way on camels in Wadi Rum. And you look at these places and there's no telephone poles.
Right.
There's no road.
Right.
There's no road. I mean, yeah, there's a road, but we're not on the road.
Sure.
You know, we're with one guide, miles an hour. We've got 4 camels, and that's it. And one's packing. And, you know, Saba, tiny little, you know, Wadi Rum father. I mean, he's got a family, but he looks like a kid.
Right.
And he's wearing flip-flops. And for 3 nights, 4 days and 3 nights, we're going all over Wadi Rum. We go from Aqaba. We take about 50 clicks, 40 some odd clicks to Aqaba from Wadi Rum. And so we ride the camels through the desert and then in and around. It's just...
So sometimes you'd be on camels, sometimes you'd be on horses, other times you'd be in vehicles. Sometimes I'm sure you had to walk in certain places.
Yes. Yes, so we hiked along.
How close... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. How close to that month did you guys get? Like, how long did it actually take you to get from A to B?
Well, it really was around 28 days,
Nice.
and depending upon what you include leaving. I left from Colorado. Miles left, and we hooked up at JFK in New York. And
the reason I ask is because, you know, guys like us, we like the adventure, but we also like to adhere to a timeline. You know, so you know, it's like we're planning on a month, and you don't want to go over. You know,
we
plan,
didn't.
So you guys were within pretty close
day,
to the timeline. Nice.
Absolutely, and every day was scheduled, and so we did work it out to have the drivers. And Jamie's involvement was critical.
Yeah.
For us. We, you know, just simple things. What we found through the checkpoints, and especially at another time, we were invited to a majlis in the Asir province, and the governor of that was His Royal Highness Prince Khalid bin Faisal bin Abdulaziz. So he goes back to, you know, Abdulaziz, and his father is Faisal, and he's, you know, a high-level royal family member, and he's the governor of Asir. Well, we were visiting, and through, actually, Abdullah's father, Osama, introduced us with, you know, there are different manners of getting an audience with the prince. But in this case, we were 2 Americans. It was known that we were there to see with our own eyes, to be there to meet the people as Americans. And that was unheard of. To a person, people would say, why are you here?
Right.
Why are you here? We're so sorry for 9/11. We're not all terrorists, you know?
Yeah.
They're not, we don't know how we'll get our standing. we just heard it many, many, many times, the grief. And with the Prince Khaled, we were drawn to this palace hall that had gorgeous rugs, carpets, and chairs along the side of the wall were sheikhs, Bedouin sheikhs that came in from the desert, were having a meeting, a majlis, with His Royal Highness. And it was set up for them to, these guys, they were the guests with the prince, were the eyes and ears of the desert.
Yeah.
And so they're reporting on what's going on. If there's a conflict between people or tribes or this or that, it's handled at this majlis.
Oh, okay.
Afterwards, we went out the one door, and then behind us came the prince and his entourage, guys with rifles. They weren't assault rifles, just rifles, sure. Old rifles,
right.
And a level of pomp, but the prince looked regal.
Sure. It's
dark, it's misty. We're at 9,000 feet in a sear, and he steps up and he says, "It is nice to have you here. I invite you to dinner.
Nice.
Please, you will see that we're not all terrorists." And he said it just like that.
Nice.
"You'll see that we're not all terrorists." And then we stepped aside and he marched on, and half an hour later, we're sitting on his left. We're up there.
For a lot of those guys, it's important that we know that. Like there was a lot of people that we worked with who they would say the same stuff. They're like, we're not like those guys. That's really cool that they would, and I'm sure that you making a conscious decision to come to their region. I mean, that culture is inherently welcoming. Like if you knock on their door, you're like, "Hey man, I'm lost. I need some help." They're like, they'll bring you in. So they're already in that mindset. So I can imagine hearing that you're there, specifically to have that experience. I'm sure they were very accommodating.
They were.
Yeah. Very,
very much so. And at checkpoints, it just rings in my ear. Americi. Our passports are very clearly what they are. It says United States of America.
Sure.
And it's blue,
right,
with gold. And they're holding it almost like they keep looking at that, looking at us, and it's just like closing it. Why are you here?
Yeah, you're probably the first American they ever saw. I mean, that guy probably had never seen an American God before, just heard stories of it, or
right. Yeah. Exactly.
So, well, speaking of that, so was that the experience, or did you run into any situations where it was like, man, are we, it was a little tense, or you were like, man, we might not get out of here, or was there anything like that at all, or did Jamie kind of like facilitate the whole path, kind of grease some palms and get it all squared away?
No, Jamie didn't have anything to do with that other than instruction.
Oh, okay.
To us, and the travel company had already paid. They set it up.
Gotcha.
And it's literally, we got into some, have you ever seen the original Suburban?
Like the vehicle?
That's been bombed out? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like this, when you see things that, as
yeah.
Of course, you've seen it. It's like seeing an old Mercedes and just this trash.
Yeah.
But it still has the emblem.
Right.
And you go, "Oh, we're getting a Mercedes," but that's not saying much.
Sure.
But it was, they took us where we needed to go, and we set it up that no one else would know. They would drop us off, and they did not know where we were going, who we were going to see, or who the next driver was, if we had another driver, in the next hour or whatever it was.
Okay.
We kept it very separate.
Good.
And so as far as any danger, Jamie told us what to look for, but it's our constitution and our sense of self, our desire was pure.
Okay.
And we were willing, it's not that we were willing to stick our neck out, because we did, certainly, but it was not being perceived as a target.
Gotcha.
Never ever thinking that I am a target for anything. other than good.
Yeah. And those guys had the heads up, I'm sure, that you were on your way. And if I have to think that even if they knew you were coming, if any of those bigwigs knew you were coming, if anybody gave you any trouble, they would just get their butt handed to them by these big, you know what I mean? Like
that happened after. Yeah, that happened afterwards. And Khaled's announcement about us was just hours before.
Yeah.
You know, and since then we've had audience with him, I would say 4 or 5 times.
Nice.
Maybe more, because we did an event. We did an 8-day sea festival for him.
Wow.
And that's when we brought in the Formula 2000 intercontinental boat racing. And we brought 17 countries there and 14 countries with hot air balloons.
Nice.
And it was always countries represented, not individuals.
Sure.
Individuals from Spain, France, you know, wherever, all over America. And so the intensity, the most intense was the crossing into Israel. It started with knowing that we had to ask for a visa stamp placed on a piece of paper, not in our passport.
Oh, okay.
And because we wanted to be able to move back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
You see?
Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like, for me, I'm always thinking ahead, okay, as an actor now, what would I do? What would I say? Things are this. And it was like, if someone was handing that to me, I would be insulted.
Yeah.
So I said, don't look for the person to be insulted. This is their job. And this is legitimate.
Right.
And you can ask. And I asked the person, it was Jamie, are you sure? He said, yes. It's very, just be direct. And the other things, like, you know, your Americanism, like, hey, man, what's going on? How you doing?
Right. None of that.
No. And just you learn, you know, basic Arabic, which we did, you know, numbers, where, how to get, and da-da-da-da, thank you, and so forth.
Yeah.
And, but you say, assalamu alaikum, and you look directly in the eyes. You hold the hand just a moment longer, and you let them know you are you, and it's calm. Everything's calm.
Yeah.
And just a little bit of a smile, just a little, you know. He said the number one thing, and he said I found it all over the world, but especially in this area, graciousness. To be gracious, you know.
And see, the thing about it is, you're gracious because it's the right thing to do, but also if you're not, and they take it the wrong way, that can go bad in a hurry. I mean, if you start insulting people or they perceive it as an insult, man, I mean, you're out there flapping, and there's nobody really to help you out in that situation. So you got to really watch what you're doing.
I will say that the only time that I sensed the reality of what could happen was through my interpreter when I was producing this 8-day sea festival. Mm-hmm. And just to say, I had the most unbelievable individual. Mark Lockers was Richard Branson's project manager for a number of years. Wow. Handled his circumnavigation attempts.
Okay.
And Mark is a pilot, balloon pilot, a motorcyclist. He's done 3/4 of the way around the world.
Wow.
He's an artist. He's a musician. He's just one of those guys that is so talented. The guy for a commercial cargo dropped an Audi out the back of a cargo plane.
Yeah.
Had it appear, parachute flies off, landing on the back of a flatbed in motion.
Jeez.
And goes in reverse, the ramp, the back of this flatbed, pops down, it goes into reverse, swirls around, and takes off down the desert.
Nice.
What kind of a mind do you have to have, a knowledge and skill to the combination of winds, weights, you know, canopy, timing,
right?
So much. That's Mark. Well, he was my project manager on and it's become a great friend.
Nice.
So we've had great people. Doing this 8-day sea festival, my interpreter also became a friend. During the thing, I took a car into town. In the town where this event was happening, we're away from the town. It's called Gechma. It's the very southern part of Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea. And I went in, we were expecting all the international people to arrive, and we were going to give them, there was a complication with the guy that was going to do the food services. So I went into town to get a whole mass of chickens and rice. Yeah. But I went alone, and I got back, and Ali, he was almost in tears mad. He thought I had been taken.
Wow.
He said, "You don't know. You think because you're you can just go. You cannot go alone. You cannot. They're bad people, very bad people. They grab you, boom, they grab you. You're gone." And I felt a chill just like I did just now, saying that, remembering him saying that, because he was so, "I love you. You are my brother. You would be, I have no control. If I am with you, I have control.
Sure.
I am Ali al-Shahiri. Everybody knows that." The al-Shahiri family is a big name.
You probably got lucky.
So that was, I said, okay, Ali, of course. So that was part of there. And then the crossing into Israel was so tense because of witnessing not only what we're dealing with, because we stand out and we're underdressed. We didn't want to look like military, but we didn't want to look like tourists.
Sure.
So we were in sort of khaki and just, calm stuff. And we had a backpack. And, but getting on the bus to go across the bridge, well, the bus stops. And for 45 minutes, you're going, what's going on? Can't open a window. We're packed, sweating. I don't sweat. I mean, I sweat, but I have to, it's got to be really hot for me because I do a lot of running, a lot of swimming, a lot of this, and I'd done a lot of mountains in Colorado before, but it became, and baby crying and the smells, and we're standing up, we're packed into the bus like sardines. And it's like Jamie said, it is not a good idea for you to go across on a bus. Yes, you can do it. He said, but they are targets. And we said, we're not looking to be a target, but we are looking to experience what it is that people go through in their lives daily. And we saw it. Yeah. We felt it. And there's some little low, kind of almost like rap. I mean, we're in Jordan. Rap music on one end, and Kalthum, which is an old-time famous, singer, Saudi singer. I think she was Saudi, or maybe it was Jordanian. But so quiet, and the fear, the tension.
Oh, so everybody on the bus, when it stopped, they thought, this is it. Something's going to happen.
Well, they don't know. No one knows what's going on.
Oh, okay.
No one knows what's going on.
Jeez.
We come around the corner, come around the hill. You come around, and it just stopped. And I was tall enough I could see. When we got on the bus, we went right. Made sure we were right next to the exit. An emergency exit.
Right.
We were going to stand up. We weren't going to sit down. And besides, the bus was already full when we got on.
Right.
We were glad to get on. And then you see that the driver's talking to someone, and you go, "What's going on?" It's like, no, what's going on? Not with fear. It's a legitimate question. What's going on?
Yeah, like, why are we stopping? You would ask that in
man talking to man. There's nothing. It's just no emotion. Man talking to man. Okay, go across the bridge, and we're going across so slow. Maybe so slow.
Yeah.
And then it's in a big, gridiron, like parking lot. And there's a bus way over here, and we're parked. We parked, and we're like 50 yards from that bus. And then we sit. Two guys show up, Tabor assault rifles. They're in blue jeans and work shirt, like American work shirts, double patch, light blue, and assault rifles. And they're like, must be assigned to our bus. And they're checking the bus out, and they're just walking around. Miles and I are just, where is he? He's over here. He's over here in the beginning. Like, who is it? What is this? And we see another bus pulls up to our left. We're always watching the other bus. People are getting out of the bus that was over in the parking lot. walking to the immigration. I don't know. It was almost an hour. Again, just being held, sweating. And it's like, okay, this is what's happening. Stay calm. Totally. Don't let your mind wander. Be alert.
The not knowing would be crazy. I mean, just like what?
It's just, for myself, I was really just be alert. Where are the guys? There's no talking going on. It's just quiet. Some people are clearly some students or something reading, look like scholastic books, and people just being quiet and no one really looking you in the eye. You look and you see they're looking at you and they look away, but they're just, this is what they go through every day.
I can't imagine.
And I say, if they can go through this, I can go through this.
Right.
And Miles and I, and we just.
Did you guys talk to each other at all, or were we just like, you were just.
Very little, just very little. We talked about where are the two guys, what are they doing, what's happening. Bus unloading, new bus pulling in. There's a pattern here.
Sure.
Evidently, the sign for that bus to unload, and the sign I didn't see it, but then we unload. And and every time, like when we're at the first stop, when the bus did start going, it's like it jerks, and everybody goes, and now we're moving, and then stopping. And then you hear, the door opens and it's just quiet. Everybody just quietly gets off and walks to the door.
I wonder if they were going that slow just to make sure that the guys with the guns knew they were not a threat, because I reckon if you come barreling at that checkpoint, there's a chance you might get lit up. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
But everything's done very calmly. But the door opens. When we walked into the door, the glass doors of immigration, it was like the volume went. Whew,
oh, really?
And it was orders. Step back. I said, step back. Coming from different areas, and put that down. Some people speaking, a foreign language, but the Israelis speaking directly, some English, and but it was clearly orders.
Yeah.
And we got a piece of that action in the book.
Okay.
And Magnus having one experience, Finn having very different experience.
Sure.
And regardless of what we went through, which was for Americans, wild and different, but as I said, necessary.
Yeah.
Mine was Finn's was a female immigration officer. Beautiful, really, very attractive. No, it was attractive. It was attractive because it had been 28 days of not really being around. Someone that had it was rose perfume,
Sure.
And just seemed clean and nice and white teeth and braid, and a uniform. And she was more commando than commando.
Sure.
Oh, there was no messing around.
Yeah.
Finn in the book, he looks away. He's just like almost lost in dreamland. And she says, "Mister, look at me when I talk to you." And then going through the backpack. And, what is this? What is this? What I didn't tell you, we had a BGAN. Do you know what BGAN?
No.
BGAN was that Broadband Global Access Network.
Okay.
Computer. It's kind of white, looks like a computer. It's got a lid, you flip it open, and there's nothing inside. And it perplexed everyone. What is this? It's like, suddenly, it's like it could be bomb.
Yeah, right.
What is
yeah, that's interesting, because if they look through everybody else's bag, it's probably just like normal stuff. But you have like sat phone, computer, all this stuff, and they're like, well, what are you guys doing? And it could be anybody.
Well, well, she says, "Oh, I get it."
Oh, she did.
She calls over an associate. Hey, I forgot what his name was. Take a look at this. It was the. She said 400, and she's holding it, and it wasn't up like this. She said 406 megahertz.
Yeah. I'm sure she knew exactly what it was.
she said, "We don't have this yet." And so, but like I said, it's necessary because anything could happen. It's not personal. And that's what
Sure.
where you learn, you take it personally. I mean, someone cutting you off in line or someone saying, I mean, all those things that we deal with in the United States, someone giving you the bird, going
Right.
through, by you or whatever. First of all, those don't happen, but you just don't, there's that pause between stimulus and response, and you take it.
Yeah.
Pause, and you just keep it real.
Yeah, it's different over there for sure. I mean, it's not, you cannot get away with the same stuff. Well, not only, I mean, we really shouldn't be taking it personally here. I mean, people here are doing the same, but over there, they really don't mean anything by it. You know, if they bump into you or they cut you off or whatever, they're not, it's not an intentional act for them. It's just the way, it's just their culture.
It's not, I'm better than you.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
It's not like here. It's a whole different defense system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a level of entitlement, and you're no better than I am. How dare you do that to me?
Right.
Whoa. I found that as I put on the years to really truly take that pause.
Yeah.
And to see what's really going on and I just don't react the same way. And I think that comes from the experiences and knowing that bottom line, things are going to be okay. Right. They work out,
Yeah.
And you're okay. And that's the big one.
I mean,
Jerusalem was phenomenal, JD.
Yeah.
These places I haven't mentioned. I mean, these places were just spectacular. The forts, the Yambu Fort, going up the Hejaz, the Red Sea, the color, the Hejaz, the desert and the Red Sea, and swimming, snorkeling. Miles went scuba diving and seeing octopus. He took me down. I went down 30 feet or so.
Yeah.
We just shared his oxygen, and seeing octopus and seeing. I just have only seen in National Geographic the beautiful pictures of the fish.
Right.
And later doing that sea festival a year and a half later, the Lebanese, I just made so many different friends from so many different countries. Lebanese were just full of life.
Yeah.
And one guy was a spear fisherman. He brought in dinner for like 20 of us. And it was just spectacular. And the food, we have recipes in the book of the food that we ate. Because food was so important. It was a part of the camaraderie and getting to know.
Oh, yeah.
Where the stories came out. You can take someone's opinion and go, I don't know about that. Take someone's story. That's where you learn to like them, love them, empathize with them. You go, yeah. And then you tell your story about a child, about being a child, about a parent, or about friends, or about something that's happened. Real things, about a bombing. Or you listen to someone that was at Seeds of Peace. And the guy, and he's older. Seeds of Peace has been around since 93. We were there in 2006. And he's a guy. And I thought, okay. I said, now after your camp, did you go into the IDF? Yes. Did you have any conflict? Yes. Did you have any conflict with Palestinians? Were you involved in any conflict with the Palestinians? Yes. I said, would you want to elaborate? Did you ever feel that you were? He said, no. I said, do you know if you were ever in an area where maybe someone you went to camp with lived? Yes. I do what I can do for my friends. And I do have friends that are Palestinian. And I met them there in camp. But there's no need for me to talk about it.
Yeah.
I am not in the IDF now. But it was so serious.
It's got to be rough. I mean, it's got to be tough to live in that area. I mean, it's like you're all essentially the same people, but then you're completely different. You know what I mean? It's crazy how it's I don't know, so volatile.
So our book, A Line in the Sand, is based on our 2006 trek.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, one of the reasons for going, of course, was to see with our own eyes, to experience it, and also research for the play, which has helped. Our focus has been the play in our lives, our children, our families, our moves, and this and that. And it was October 7th, and we've kept up with news of the Middle East. But it was October 7th. It was like the day after. Miles said, we've got to write the book. You're right. We started it before, and we took a totally different track. And we came up with the idea to do an historical fiction so that we could include history that's spot on based on what we know and what we've read. We've done extensive reading and research for the play and helping the playwrights and as producers and our executive producer and understanding things. And the book was a response to October 7th. And the situation within October 7th, what we've seen is that the anger that we saw in the Middle East, we did see it. We saw it in a driver after a checkpoint. We went through a checkpoint, and there, in this case, there was a tank, and it was right on the just on the road that runs north and south along the Dead Sea outside of Amman, probably 45 minutes, an hour outside of Amman. We wanted to go to the Dead Sea. And at this checkpoint was this tank. And I thought, oh, this, but the barrel, after the truck in front of us moved, lowered on us.
Oh.
That was, I was like, and Miles is in the back. I said, you see that? He goes, yeah, it's moving. The barrel's moving. And meanwhile, the driver's dealing with the guy. We'd given the passports to the driver to give to the, and then say, American, yeah, okay. We went through, we made the left-hand turn just beyond the barrel of the gun. And I said to the driver, Mahmoud, why a tank at this checkpoint? And I looked over him, and the guy was shaking. He had his hand on the wheel. He said, there! He's pointing to Israel. We found out that he was Palestinian. He was a driver for Seeds of Peace. Seeds of Peace set this up for us in Amman, set this up for us to go to the Dead Sea.
Okay. And
it happened to be Easter, and we did. And so seeing that rage. So October 7th, we saw that the anger that's turned into hatred, and it's undeniable.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no atonement. I mean, it's like it is just pure hatred. And that, when I was reminded of Mahmoud and his, that, and he wasn't red in the face, he was white.
Yeah.
And October 7th, it just hurt for everyone. The guys doing it, and of course, what the people.
Sure.
Because knowing that it has escalated to the most heinous crimes openly.
Yeah.
And to the innocents at a concert.
Right.
And then, of course, retribution by a power that has the same hatred, one for the other for the one. Mm-hmm. Victims of victims. And for me, for us, in writing the book, and it's in the book, it's, when does it stop? When is that level of righteous indignation, which is being kind, stop? Because one side's doing it, then the other side, other side. Ukraine, Russia, right. Palestine, Israel. And we see it in bold color, and then in just distressing black and white.
Yeah.
And I think my purpose is to serve people. That's what I've found. And I was thinking of it this morning. I think, what if JD asked me, well, what's your life's purpose? I don't know. But if I look at things, it's been a purpose of serving, and it's just come in these different forms. I've been asked to do things, and that's the way I've served. And I remember standing up for the first time for the underdog. I realized this serving has to do with, the level of entitlements that we have, and we're seeing it so hugely in our country now. The imbalance is becoming more one-sided. And Miles and I have this thing in us as a part of our time, and what we do is to serve a greater good. Our next book is called Havana Familia. And so it is about, that imperial view that lasted for a long time.
Yeah.
With our book and Lawrence, and we've seen pictures of Lord Balfour, where he's standing in his beautiful clothes in the fireplace, and above his head is a freaking portrait of him. The portrait of a portrait. I mean, it's like the imperial gaze and white man going after what they think they can take, and it's like, now look, we need this, and we're going to help you. But we're going to take this, and it would be best if you just let us do it.
All right.
And Cuba has been a mistress to so many different countries and companies.
Yeah, really. I mean, anybody.
And, Spanish, the Russians, us.
Yeah.
And the Sugar Kings, and the Bacardi, and the mafia, and the casinos, and the debauchery, and I'm not addressing moral or immoral issues. I'm just talking about what happened to the people that live there.
Yeah.
Where are they? Okay, you've got a shiny building over here, but how is this serving the people that live here? Mm-hmm. And so I'm headed to Havana next, in the middle of June. Miles has been there a number of times. In 2016, when things opened up, he was doing some business there, and then they disinvited him.
Oh.
Yeah. And anyway, we're writing a book on and using a time travel device like we do in A Line in the Sand to go back in time to the history. So we go back into 1958, just before Che and Castro make it. They were young guerrillas. Mm-hmm. And speaking of guerrillas, it was T.E. Lawrence was one of the original guerrillas, and he actually wrote the definition in the Encyclopedia Britannica of what is guerrilla warfare, and then he breaks it down to mathematics almost. So purpose, that's that, and we're very excited about the new book.
So are you guys still in the fact-finding phase, the research phase, or have you started writing it yet?
Yeah, we started writing. We have a full first draft.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah, and it's being fleshed out, and that's one of my major jobs, is to bring in the context of, I know I'm going to end up comparing the Morro Castle, the fortress in the harbor in Havana, to Crac de Chevalier. There's just, which is in our book,
sure,
A Line in the Sand. So it's just Magnus and Finn once again involved, and we actually have 2 skydive jumps that are involved in this book as well. That sport ones or mission oriented. Yeah, no. One is we're abandoning a plane that could be going down. It's it's in a storm.
Oh, okay.
And we decide we'll jump even though it's a storm.
I was going to say that's might not be. It could be worse than jumping in the storm.
Well, I've gone through a few clouds myself.
Yeah.
And it can be, you get wet and you just lose track of where you are, but you move quickly when you get below cloud level. That wasn't intentional. It was intentional, but it came in.
Yeah.
by the time we got there.
Well, I guess at
Anyway,
least you have some control if you're under canopy as opposed to just sitting in the back of a plane waiting to crash.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're working those details to make it believable
Sure.
are being worked out. But Miles made his first jump. Actually, he jumped out of the ranch outside of New York City. He trained there, and he did his first jump at 13,000 feet with a guy in front, guy in back of him, and they were all on comms.
Nice.
And so he is thrilled. You know, we wanted to go this year to do the Normandy jump,
Oh, yeah.
the round canopy.
Yeah.
And one of the podcasters that we both have actually, Miles just did a podcast with Adam Dorito, and Adam is going to do. He's in the reserves. He's going to do a jump this year in Normandy. Yeah,
I heard it's amazing. I've never been over there myself, but I had a lot of buddies that have made that trip, and they said it's really awesome.
Miles knows the area very well. Miles is fluent French speaking.
Oh, right on.
And that comes from a student exchange when he was in high school. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
You know, and he's just kept up with it, and he knows Paris well, and he goes to tries to get a place in the summertime, for 6 weeks.
Nice.
And Villefranche is where he goes. It's kind of on I guess it's the Riviera.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, this has been really exciting talking with you.
Same.
I wonder if you have some questions.
I'm not really. I kind of asked him as we went along, but I just I really want to, because you and I talked earlier before we got on here, and I absolutely love just to kind of tie it all back together. I love that thing your mom said about, because there's so many guys like me and, guys I've served with, and just people that are in general that they can't wait to get out of their hometown, or they can't wait to get out of away from their family. They can't wait to get anywhere but here. But like your mom said, but unless you can handle what you're doing, unless you can handle the situation you're in, it doesn't matter where you go. You're still going to be the same person in that situation. Yeah. You're still going to have the same issues you have here. It's just going to be there now. So you need to have a sound kind of a way of living in your current situation before you can go anywhere else. Is that kind of in a nutshell? Or?
Well, of course, it's another way of putting it, and and any listener will put it in their own way. But I think we can all resonate. It resonates with us, whether we do it or not, and it requires trust. I believe in a higher force, and I learned that my ego is about this important.
Sure,
and I've got one. Oh my God, I am not, a perfect person at all. I'm intolerable, as well, I'm sure. But it's trusting that, but it's being willing to, I love the word pivot, but it's used so much, but it is what it is. And it is pivoting, and it's a refocus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think of it. And those reasonings, with my study, my study as far as out of self is Stoicism. And I've just been very much, I do daily readings, and I work to imbibe them from Stoicism, from Marcus and Seneca and Epictetus. And I find that is the things that are within my control. My mama talking.
Right. You
control this right now.
Yeah.
It's your thinking. Straighten it out. And I can remember my mother coming to me and saying, I want to tell you, young man, you're off course. Now get back on course. Now, that's all she would say.
It's like, how do I do that?
Wait a minute.
I need more info.
I'm off course and I got to get back on course. We could start throwing slur words and slang on this one. Like, what the?
Right.
But she said, and you figure it out. And that was like the icing on the cake.
Sure.
Okay. All right. You mean I have to think?
Exactly right. But look where it got you, though. I mean, it's It's those lessons that we take for granted, or we gloss over, that our parents taught us, and then it gets us to where we are, you know.
And the belief, it's when someone believes in you. We hear it. I mean, we hear it publicly, oftentimes, maybe at the Academy Awards. I mean, or in awards in sports, and someone thanking that early coach or that early teacher. You know, mine was an English teacher, and then it became my first acting teacher director, Max Whitaker. I mean, Max, my goodness. When he said, you know, he called me into his office and he said, I have a show in mind and a part for you. And I said, okay. And he said, I'd like you to do Petruchio in Taming of the Shrew. And I was like, wow. Okay. And it was wonderful. And what an experience. It was the first time that I was cast and everybody was cast around me. And it's not ego. It's not, I'm only saying that was the fact.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up, every Kate in the show that auditioned with me. And we got what he wanted.
Nice.
But I mean, I was there to do my part. He got what he wanted. And when it came time to do the show, and did it go well? Well, the head of ACT, American Conservatory Theater, came down and saw the show because some of his actors were a part of this summer repertory company. And he saw my show, and it was kind of modeled after one of the show that he was very physical, and he did a very physical show in a much bigger, very well. It's like saying Juilliard. ACT was huge, and they're just fantastic. And Mr. Ball came backstage, and there were guys from ACT. They said, "Oh, Mr. Ball wants to see you." I was going, all right. He's out in the hall. I went out in the hall, and there was this man, and he wasn't a tall man. He's very well known, highly regarded. And I said, "It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Ball." He said, "I wanted just to say I thoroughly enjoyed your performance." I said, "Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed the show." He said, "I didn't say that." Okay. Lesson learned.
Yeah. Take the compliment, right?
False humility? What was it? I don't know. I just thought, you know, it was a show he liked.
Sure,
he didn't like me. And he had just given me a compliment. And he corrected me like immediately.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, thank you very much." I said, it's incredible to be acting with so many of your people here. He said, "Yes."
Yeah, it is.
You know, and that was it.
Right.
And I walked in, but it's always stuck with me when someone gives you a compliment, accept it.
Take it. That's right.
Just take it. And it's not, don't let it go to your head.
Right.
It's their view, but getting a compliment is just affirmation. Mm-hmm. But always consider the source. And so my mom saying, deal with where you are now, in the moment, and handle it. And so I've felt that I've done that. And at times I've felt overwhelmed. The last time I felt overwhelmed was starting to do these podcasts. Mm. And it's like, you're not on social media. You're not. I mean, I am now more. Sure. And Miles certainly is. And we promote shows with Miles and a little bit through me as well. But it was like talking about myself. Like, whoa. It's like, just be real. Just be real. It's like, yeah. It just seemed strange. And also knowing that, okay, there's, 30 some odd podcasts out there that you're in the public view now. I've never been, because I've always worked for people that had the attention, not me. Right. Not me.
But I think that's good. I think that's a testament to you that, and a lot of guys I have on here, they feel the same way. They're like, and I try to express, it's not so much that you're tooting your own horn or you're talking about yourself per se. It's just about your story is so valid and it's so interesting and people need to hear it. You're the best person to tell that story. No one else can tell your story better than you. and you have. I mean, this was a phenomenal episode. I mean, the things that you've done are so vast. Like kind of like I alluded to in the beginning, it's that you're so different, from the Navy to acting to trekking across the the Middle East. I mean, those are so categorically different things. And the way you told it was just phenomenal.
That's great, JD. I'm glad it's been a joy to be here.
Yeah.
On a Saturday. It's Memorial Day weekend.
That's right.
Wow.
Yep.
It's always been an amazing time. When I was a senior in high school, I played trumpet. And again, someone that the music teacher, the band leader, was a trumpet player, and he was so cool. He was in the Navy band. That's why. And he just had a clean, clear, and he liked jazz. And it was during the time Chicago came out. And so the horns in Chicago, we played a couple of Chicago tunes in kind of like we called it the jazz band or whatever it was. But before I left for the Navy, I was asked to play taps at the Memorial Day, at the cemetery in Gaysville. The cemetery is about from here to there.
Wow.
It was tiny.
Sure.
It's right off the road. And there were maybe 17 people there. I mean, wasn't a big thing, but they were there, and they had asked me, and then suddenly all these other people showed up, and I was just to play taps, and it was on the hillside, and it was almost a natural echo over into the mountains.
Yeah.
And it just somehow connected me to this country. And I was going into the Navy, and I'd already signed up, and I'm willing to give your life, yes. And the flag had meaning.
Yeah. And
it just really struck home. And I think of Memorial Day, certainly the beginning of summer, but it was the beginning of, to me, freedom, a freedom of spirit, where my spirit just took off into this unknown, but willing.
Yeah.
Willing.
Yeah.
And curious.
Yeah, that had to be powerful. I mean, sometimes those smaller venues, the fact that you're all there kind of sharing that moment, when it gets too big, it kind of maybe loses a little bit of the meaning, but with all you guys right there in that small little cemetery, I'm sure that was really powerful.
It was.
Yeah.
And it was short, and it was in and done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on, man. I appreciate it. This was great. A Line in the Sand is out right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the new one, Havana, will be out. How long before that one comes out?
Before the end of the year.
Okay.
Before the end of the year.
So go out and buy A Line in the Sand, and then when Havana comes out, pick up that one. And
thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. This is awesome. Thank you very much.
Fully enjoyed every moment.
All right.
Thank you, JD.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. My pleasure.
Okay, man.
All right, man.
Later. Take care.